Right, so just sit comfortably in the chair. Try and sit up a little bit, your feet down so you get a bit of support from your feet. Rubbing your hands together. Tapping over your face. And then over your head and neck. One shoulder and your arm. The other side. And the upper part of your chest. The belly. And the legs. Okay, so sit back with your feet out in the reclining position. Letting your weight drop into the chair. Just sort of let yourself relax a little bit with that feeling of your weight. It's okay to feel heavy in the chair. And just very gently, really from sort of like hips up to your shoulders, gently sort of tighten up your back a little bit, and then once again, let it relax. And notice how you get that stronger feeling of dropping back. And it's almost as though when you tighten up, you're trying to lift yourself out of the chair. And then as you drop down, you become a bit more aware of the chair. I'm going to take this idea into the upright sitting posture. So come back up, paying a little bit more attention to your posture at this point. Feet below your knees, forwards in the chair if you can. If you find that your back starts to ache, then sit back, but try and stay with this posture for a few moments if you can comfortably. And once again, just sort of tensing up your hips, your back, your shoulders, and then dropping down. And again, feeling heavier, perhaps a bit more aware of the chair, maybe a bit more aware of the weight in your feet. And then the same thing, just with your shoulders, or lift your shoulders up and let them drop down. And once again, just aware of what stops your shoulders dropping down. And in this instance, it's obviously the chair's still there, but it's almost like your shoulders drop into your rib cage. So when we release that tightness, potentially we can become a little bit more aware of this support that comes from within our body. The bones of our skeleton, particularly bones of the legs, a little bit more difficult perhaps to feel that in the chair. The pelvis, spine, and of course, I just talked about the rib cage supporting you and supporting the shape of your body. So that's important in its own right, that we begin to recognize that there is this potential support and strength within the body. We'll come back to that in a few moments, but to begin with, just turning your head gently. So when we talk about the idea of connection in Tai Chi, and this is a really important element, I think, when we start to feel that our bodies are moving as one unit, body and mind really moving as one unit. We start to get that smoother flow in the movement, but also a sense of sort of, in a way, body and mind coming together, defragmenting. I think this is one of the really useful benefits that we get from the art, but rather than this sense of being, as we say, all over the place and a bit kind of frazzled in our minds, perhaps sometimes, especially if you're busy trying to do lots of things. This calmer feeling begins to develop as your mind is gathered. And then your shoulders, hands in front of your shoulders, rotating gently. Going forwards. Hands down to your sides and rotating your arms. And winding around. A sort of soft, supple feeling we're looking for in joints like our wrists, our elbows, and our shoulders. And then the other way. Let your hands rest. Once again, aware of your weight pressing down to your hips and your pelvis, and then a gentle push from the hips, almost like you're about to stand up. What this does is it just pushes you against your pelvis and tilts your pelvis forwards. And then, same idea, with more of your weight in your legs, gently pushing down. So, generating the movement, and obviously your upper body is now moving, but initially focusing on this sense of generating your movement from the ground rather than leading with your shoulders. And specifically going back to the skeleton and that awareness we have of our skeleton, this sort of bowl-shaped structure of your pelvis, tilting forwards and moving you and connecting there to your spine. So provided we can find a posture where we don't have to really stiffen up in our back, we have the potential to let the spine move a little bit. So we start to change our perspective on how we're generating the movement, rather than the habitual way, which is common to all of us for understandable reasons, which is to sort of lean forwards or to move forwards, swing our arms perhaps. All of these can be relevant, by the way. I'm not saying we shouldn't ever do it, but it's a matter of where they come. And we often don't get that sense of a movement from deeper down and from deeper in. And if we're not holding our back tight, it shouldn't take a great deal of effort just to get a little bit of movement in our spine. And that's like dropping a pebble into a pond, and the ripples of the movement spread out. It's not quite that passive because obviously we've got muscles and so on and so forth working all the way through the upper part of our body. Plus we've got the continual movement, so it's like dropping more than one pebble down, one after the other. And gradually that wave-like movement builds up. This change of perspective is really important. I'll demonstrate why in a few moments. Turn just a little bit. So now you're going more towards one leg, but it's the same thing. Maybe pushing a little bit more from the opposite side. And if you find that you're not getting that much movement, that's okay. We can gradually learn to increase that range of movement. And then turn to the other side. The pelvis rocking forwards and backwards, and then changing this to the circular movement. Pelvis, the hips turn, pelvis rocks back, like a ball kind of rolling around. And that drawing your shoulders and your head around in a smooth circle. Again, not too big a circle. Beginning to notice perhaps what else is happening in your upper body once you've initiated each stage of the move, muscles extending and contracting. So I'm not suggesting that your upper body is passive in this. Go back the other way. Come back to the center. And then raise one heel, push your foot out, put your heel down, lower your toes, gently press the foot into the floor, and back, planting. And then on the other side. One more time. Now, let me just show you something. Before we go into the main set of exercises, let me just get... If I have this pile of books in front of me like this, and they're in the way, so I decide I want to move them, I'll get my one foot out of the way. I think, well, I'll just push the stack to one side. If I push against the top book, this happens. The whole pile collapses. I don't get the movement I want, and so on and so forth. If I push it on the book at the bottom, it moves along quite easily. So when we move from lower down, we're able to keep our structure and our stability much more easily. What we often do, and this is an important aspect of just everyday mobility, walking around, but what we tend to do is we angle forward slightly, so our center of gravity goes forwards, and that helps us to move along, because essentially gravity is pulling us along a little bit. All well and good, and I'm not suggesting that's the wrong thing to do. The problem is it tends to dominate our movement, and it tends to be all that we do. So when we lose that perspective of also moving from the ground, then we start to become top heavy, and we risk what happens with the pile of books there, which is that it loses its structure and potentially topples over. So you could almost say that, going back to that earlier exercise, we initiate from our hips in the chair or from the ground if we're standing, and what that would do is actually push our center of gravity forwards, and then if we're walking along, our gravity goes forwards, our leg comes through, and we're fine, and then we do the same thing again. But that's when we start, when we initiate the movement from the ground. When we don't initiate the movement from the ground, it's just the top part of the body moving. So this change of perspective that I was suggesting actually is something that is worthwhile practicing, so that we don't have to think about it. You don't want to walk along the ground saying, right, I've got to put along the road, pushing from the ground and so on and so forth. You'd never get anywhere. But you want it to become much more intuitive than that. So coming back to the main body of exercises, hands at your sides, turning your hands so palms are facing forwards. Now we're going to be using our arms, we're going to be using our upper body, but we actually want to feel that there's still a connection, shall we say, to the ground, through our hips and the chair, through our feet and our legs. So many of you will be familiar with this exercise. We'll just do it like this for the moment, in stages. Let your weight sink into your hips and then push so you start to go forwards. And when you're about, I don't know, halfway forwards, then rotate your arms. Sink into your legs, push, and when you're about halfway back, rotate your arms. Just do it like this for a few rounds. It won't flow quite so easily for you, but you establish this sort of pattern of movement within your body. Gradually, you can let the movement in the upper body build, so it's not, you know, we lose that sense of the separate stages. So there's much more flow there. But at the same time, we're still aware of that connection to the ground where we initiate the movement from. First in the feet. Sometimes said in Tai Chi. In the case of the seated exercises, first in feet and hips. So this is bird folds its wings. So sometimes in all of these exercises, for one reason or another, it's worth breaking the movements down into the components, which we then allow to sort of blend together. And obviously, when we're just moving in one part of the body or focusing on one part of the body, we don't get that same sense of the whole body moving, of the energy flowing, and so on and so forth. But we will get that back, often much more strongly, I think, because we've sort of brought to the surface maybe something that was a little bit hidden. Away a bit. So the aim is always to feel that, again, your whole body's moving as one unit. The body and mind and energy are all one. And then change into fisherman cast the net again, sinking into your feet, pushing back, and then your arms forward, sinking into your hips, push in, going forward, and your arms forward. In fact, just sort of like thinking of the movement in those components can often begin to give us a sense of what else is going on. So for instance, with this exercise, one of the things that I've realized when I've approached the exercise in this way is that this area here, just in front of my shoulder, when I go forward, if the arms are slightly delayed, there's a kind of opening feeling there, like an elastic sheet or something extending out, and it then contracts. And then a similar feeling in the back of my shoulder. So it's like it extends out, so you're pulling out an elastic band and it contracts, and that helps to bring the arms through. I sometimes think of this process of breaking the movements down in that way as a bit like if you know, if you have a bike and you're repairing the bike or car or any kind of machine, sometimes what you do is you take it apart and you kind of clean up the individual components of the machine, and then when you put it back together, it's just working far more efficiently. So this is an investigative process that is really made possible by that gathering of our attention. Yet it also encourages that gathering attention. The fisherman cast a net. So it encourages a much deeper sense of focusing. With that, a deeper and stronger sense of calmness. And then this time, roll in the ball, pushing down that movement, draw your arms back, expanding up through the front of your body. Your arms drop down. Forwards again. Try not to stiffen up in your shoulders, your elbows, wrists, fingers. Just remind yourself of that sense of movement initiated from the hips, your feet, parts of your skeleton like your pelvis, spine. Again, we feel that mind-body linking, that change in awareness, that change in perspective, change in intention goes with that. Does have an effect on the mood. One more time. And then pigeon spreads its wings. Chest expanding and contracting, the rib cage moving, sort of folding inwards and outwards a little bit. Shoulder blades. And then pushing away. So a greater sense of the movement, the energy permeating far more deeply into your body. In Chinese medicine, a lot of attention is paid to particular channels, so-called the meridians, jiao. And there's good reason for that. It's a really crucial part of Chinese medicine. But it's not the only way that the energy flows through the body. Think of the jiao has been a bit like rivers and streams. But rivers and streams are where water accumulates. The water is everywhere in the environment. And in the same way, our whole bodies can be permeated by this sense of flow. You may find it's quite common to feel kind of tingling in your fingertips. And that's the movement reaching the peripheral circulation in your fingers, these tiny little capillaries just beneath the surface of the skin. And they can begin to flush out the tissue, oxygenating them, bringing oxygen to a tissue as a form of energizing that tissue, carrying away the waste products. The same is true for the periphery of the whole body. The movement will always follow this sense of an expansion outwards and then a contraction inwards. And if we think of that expansion again, coming from the center of the body, it's like pushing the movement out to the periphery of the body, drawing it back in. And then changing, let your hands drop down, roll your fingers into a hollow fist. Be able to get a finger down there. Rotating through the whole length of your arm into your shoulder. And then winding out, and forwards, opening your fingers. There's always each movement has a lot in common with every other movement, and yet will also have its own very distinctive patterns of movement within the body. Some of those will be consistent, others may come and go a little. So this combination of different patterns of the movement itself, of the flow of the blood and the lymph system, has the effect of really energizing. It's quite, I can feel like quite distant areas of your body. Still moving from the ground. And then turning your hands palm down, polishing the table, turning, easing forwards, then your back and spine, and then your arms extending, and then contracting. The other direction. Again, every now and then, bringing your attention back to basic posture, the feet, your hips, the sense of moving from below and from within. A good point to do that each time is, if this exercise is here, one stage of the movement finishes and you move on into the next stage. Taking just a moment, not to move, but to settle. One aspect of the energetics in Tai Chi is that sort of a kinetic energy that comes from the movement. There's all sorts of energetic processes within your body. Energy is the capacity to do work. So your blood flowing is a form of energy. The metabolism of oxygen is a form of energy. There's electrical type energy through your nervous system. All of these are hugely significant and become part of the movement. A very distinctive quality with Tai Chi is what I think of as a kinetic energy, the actual movement itself. More time. And then come back here, feel your weight settling into your hips, rotating your hands so they're palm up, pushing upwards through feet and hips, feeling the lengthening of your back as your arms are pushed up, and then so you're pushing the ball down into the water. So one thing in working in this way we do for us, and we see this very clearly, I think, in this exercise, is that sense of the connection to the ground and the rooting down, feeling that our center of gravity is dropping down through the ground. Again, another element, perhaps the crucial element, when we're thinking about Tai Chi as something that can really help our stability. And those patterns of expansion and contraction can quite naturally settle into a nice, steady, regular rhythm that is itself also quite soothing, calming for the mind. One more time. Change into the wild goose, turning your hands out. The image of the bird in flight may be one that is also conducive to this calm fluidity. Maybe not, it might not be the right image. Moving through water is another image that we use, partly for the same effect. And then parting the clouds. Remember that in Chinese medicine, one of the principal sort of goals, one of the principal outcomes that they're looking for is what we might think of as a reharmonization, a rebalancing of really all the energy within the body. And if you think about it in terms of energy being not simply this strange force, I mean, there's an element of that, particularly in that kinetic movement, but in a broader sense of the ability to do work. When the energy is flowing more freely, when that ability to do work is less inhibited, it's going to make a massive contribution to our well-being. We have these three aspects of Tai Chi: body, mind, and energy, body, mind, and movement, very much working as one. And then letting your arms drop down, dragon plucks the stars. I think this is a good way to think of a meaning for the term chi, which is, in some circumstances, can be quite usefully translated simply as energy. But I think in the context of Tai Chi, it's more useful to think of it being a sort of group noun, something that describes this integration of body, mind, and movement, the three treasures, the three jewels of Tai Chi. One more time after this one. And then pushing in two directions, again, feeling that movement, that lengthening through your back and your spine. And then as you push out sideways, a sideways expansion. This time, just push out sideways, just a little turn in the center of your body, changing the direction of movement in your arms. Finishing sideways push, so pushing in four directions. Extended. Scooping the sea, looking at the sky. Your hips pulling the spine back, the spine pulling your shoulders back. And then grasping the tiger's ears. Small. Change sides. Scooping the sea, looking at the sky. and then grasping the toes in. Now, open your hands again. Again, tapping over your face. And over your head and neck. Down to one shoulder and your arm. And on the other side. The upper part of your chest. Belly. Legs. Pin your heels up, just to get a bit of feeling back into the muscles of your legs. Just sitting for a while. And circling around. Back down. And standing if you wish to. So once again, we want to think about our structure, our posture. Wait for a trip over. Feet are hip width apart, weight slightly forwards, hips dropping back. And very gently, just let your hips drop down a little bit further. And once again, feel that push downwards as your legs expand in response to the sinking down. There's a pressure downwards through your feet. We're pushing ourselves up from the ground. When we sink down, we want our center of gravity to sink. When we push up, that's the root. So we want it to stay there, like a tree growing out of its root. Feeling the movement up to our legs, into our hips. And again, just aware of your spine. Think of the individual vertebrae of your spine. Imagine like there was a row of snooker balls, billiard balls, and you on a table, you hit one, and then that goes into the second, and then that pushes into the third. So again, this sense of this wave-like expansion in the spine, gradually radiating out through the rest of our upper body. Finally reaching our arms. So pushing up, pushing your elbows out, and then the whole process reversing. Always remember it's the downward movement that initiates the whole cycle. Do one more. Your arms. Now changing the stance. 1 foot forwards, keeping the width of your step, not too long a step. Start with your weight in your back foot, and we're going to go forwards. And notice if your tendency is to first of all do this. So for this exercise, we don't want to do that. You want to push from the back foot, feeling the expansion of the back leg, settling down in the front leg, and then the same thing. So the whole time, as much as you can, shoulders staying in line with your hips. This is quite a slow movement. And it's, in many ways, it's quite a small movement. We haven't taken a long stance. It's also very stable. And from that stability comes the fluidity. I don't want you to do this, but for example, when we walk down the road, we often do this and we step through. But suppose we could combine those two. Suppose we could initiate the movement. So we've got that connection to the ground and then we lean forward. We've got a bit of extra. We're already connecting downwards through there. So then that becomes potentially a much more efficient way of walking. We've got the momentum given to us by that slight angling, but we haven't lost that sense of connection to the ground. I think in many ways what we're doing here represents what is sometimes missing for us in everyday walking. Not meant to replace other things, but rather to join with them. And we're back, raising your toes and your heel. Front foot can turn out a little bit here. Stepping in. Again, feeling the movement through your legs, feeling the spine. Kind of aware of the feeling of movement of energy through your back and your spine. And then on the other side. So when we do this exercise, it's an opportunity to really focus on those aspects that are often missed. And then raising your toes and your heel. Step it in. A few steps through, either forwards or backwards. Back the other way. Okay. So now we bring the arms back into the movement, and this, of course, is always tricky. So what we've just been looking at, we want to slide into the background. We don't want to lose it, but this is where the practice of the individual exercises that we've been doing becomes really important. It kind of becomes second nature to us in a sense. Because obviously there's going to be attention now to what's happening in the upper body. And that, if we're not careful, that will kind of completely overshadow what we've just been doing. So starting in your back foot, fisherman cast the net, pushing forwards, and again, just waiting until you feel maybe that contraction there, or wherever you feel the movement, drawing your arms through. A much more efficient way of moving, a much more stable way of moving, and a way of moving that really encourages, again, this harmonization of the flow of the movement and the energies within the body, which again will have an impact just on our daily movements in all sorts of ways. So I'm coming forward, and as you settle in the front foot, turning. Letting the arms swing out to the sides. Wind blows the willows. And then on the other side. So fisherman cast the net. We can maybe extend this idea a little bit further to include not just sort of the pelvis and the spine, but bones of our legs, bones of our arms and our fingers. Again, just deepening our perspective on what's happening within our bodies, with all the outcomes that brings with it. Into wind blows the willows. And then combining that with the stepping. So forwards or backwards, depending on where you have room, but go into your leg, bring the other foot in, step out. Dragonfly skims the water. Just checking your posture here. And if you're comfortable with this next part, bring the foot in, check the posture, raise the leg. So again, that monitoring of our posture from moment to moment becomes second nature to us. and then go back the other way. One more time, if you've got space, either direction. Bring your feet parallel. Lovely. So go back to your chairs. The idea that we can, from moment to moment, monitor what's going on in the body seems like a great task. But actually, if you've ever ridden a bike or driven a car, lots of other things as well, we build that kind of awareness. Yeah, if you're driving along or cycling along and something goes wrong with the vehicle, you tend to know straight away something is different. A sound changes, the feel changes. So we can do that with something like a bike or a car. If we can do it with something like that, then we have the potential to do that within our bodies. It needn't be a great task, it needn't be tiresome, but the correction, in fact, if you ride a bike, if you drive a car, we're constantly correct. You don't just go along in a straight line. Yeah, you veer to one side and then you make the correction, you veer to the other side. That's a constant movement, but it's not something we have to think about. Oh, now I've got to go to the left, now I've got to go to the right, because you cycle along, you drive along, maybe you're chatting to somebody or something like that. So it becomes quite intuitive. But often we don't feel as though we have that sense of intuition to the same degree with our bodies. So again, it's one of the great things I think that can come out of regular Tai Chi practice. Just letting your hands drop down. An important aspect of that is a quality of stillness. You can perceive things much more easily if there is somewhere to perceive them from. It's like you go out for a walk, you come across a place that's got a lovely view, and you stop and you appreciate the view. This is the return to the mountain. So the last exercise, Embrace Tiger, Return to the Mountain, really, as you know, this aspect of expansion. You bring your hands around, feel the pull of gravity working through your body, allowing it to just bring you back. And just for a moment, there's that sense of calmness and stillness that leads into the next movement. One more time. And okay, and then just open your eyes. Thank you very much, everybody. Just to point out, I won't be able to teach a class next week. I'm doing just a one-off taster session for a local organization. So it'll only be for next week. The Thursday class will happen next week, but there won't be a class here on Tuesday. Won't be a class online on Tuesday. So, but I'll also be here this Thursday, of course. So thank you very much, everybody. Thanks for joining in, and enjoy the rest of your day.